this is COVID for Asia, and what I'm seeing is obviously India is going to see it. It already is on a trend up, I'm afraid. I think it started in September, and this new variant, they've got a different variant, but it's closely associated with this particular variant I was talking about, which I am actually putting something for adding the US COVID video in here, but it's pertaining to these countries as well, all over the world, to be honest. And that's why I'm dropping it into this video after I finish this one. Please listen to it, as it really pertains to you as well. So anyway, Sri Lanka is getting it, but not as much as, obviously there's a smaller country, but India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, I see Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq, but it's kind of hidden, all the actual figures in those countries. Thailand, Cambodia seems to be hit bad, more worse than Vietnam. Malaysia, not so much. Singapore, they're very good about controlling. And I'm going over to the Philippines as well. Taiwan, pretty good. Hong Kong, not so, because of the Chinese regime. Korea, Japan, I see that's growing round about nearer December, okay? Now, Papua New Guinea, I see it's not as widespread, but it is definitely heating up nearer Christmas. So please be careful. On Australia, I'll do it, and New Zealand on a different video. Thank you. This one's on typhoons and cyclones, and not sure if I got it right last year. I have to look it up and research it. But basically, there's going to be about 5 major cyclones coming in, which are going to be quite devastating. They seem to be more in the 5 category, the top level, than the lower level. There's maybe one is a 3 to 4, but the rest are all 4.5 to 3 of the definitely 5s. So they're kind of sweeping right through, and starting here, which is bad enough, but one's just going and sweeping through here too, and going through most of Asia here, and one sweeping from here through and into this area here, and on the tip of Australia, but Indonesia, Singapore, and the Philippine Islands will be affected by them. Even here in Vietnam, Cambodia, that is going to be part of that. So these are coming in a total of 5 devastating cyclones, really. Typhoons. Cyclones are a bit smaller, I think. I have to research it, but I'll call it typhoons. All right, so please, on the low-lying areas, I know they've been constantly hit this year. 2022 was pretty bad for them, but 2023 is going to be, I'm afraid, same thing. A lot of rain, flooding, major flooding, and devastation. Sorry to give you that bad news. Hopefully, as I always say in every video, or at least I try to remember, I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to cover a bit of Asia, only because of this. The monsoons are going to be pretty bad here in India, in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even touching Myanmar. All of those areas are going to be pretty badly devastated with monsoon season. I'm seeing a lot of flooding here in Sri Lanka, off the coast here, even a bit of Pakistan, but it's really about this area here that's hitting these monsoons, and they're going to be pretty bad. They seem to be getting longer. I don't know if somebody could let me know, excuse me, let me know if that is true, that the monsoon seems to be coming in a bit earlier and lasting a bit longer. I would like to know. All right, thank you so much. I'm sorry, and please take care, keep safe, and we're with you in our prayers. I am back, and here we are in Asia, and I'm covering flooding and intense rain systems. Obviously, monsoons are going to be coming in, and I did cover a tiny bit on another one where I am seeing that the monsoons are going to affect here, this area here, and they're going to be having flooding. Sri Lanka too, and all of this coast here, even Burma. But for some reason, it's really concentration here. I'm seeing the flooding happening. Other than that, I'm going to just point out all the countries I'm seeing there are going to be floods, I'm afraid. And that is India, and it's on this coast mostly, not so much here. There will be a bit, but it's really here on the flooding issues. Bangladesh, and Burma, or Myanmar, Thailand, the Philippines, and the Philippines and Vietnam, Cambodia, Hong Kong, Taiwan. That area is going to be because of a typhoon. And I did go over the typhoons in another previous video. Okay, so Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, a tiny bit Malaysia, and Japan obviously will have it. Not so much South Korea, but it'll be, I'm just going to move it here. There's going to be Indonesia effective here, Papua New Guinea, and flooding for Papua New Guinea, Australia and New Zealand I'll cover on another video, okay? In this area on fires, I will say that I do see some fires going on here that are kind of devastating, and it's growing from one small fire into quite a large area, quite acres and acres. So please be careful of that. There's one in Thailand here that's going in as well. That's a devastating. It's taking a lot of area, but quite frankly, it's also, there's a bit of fire damage there. And that's really it that I want to touch on anyway. Earthquakes. Here we are seeing far more. I'm going to actually go to, even though this is the Australian government's assessment of earthquakes, I'm going to USGS, and it's got a few more details of this 130, and I'm just going to, and this is for Asia, by the way, so give me a second. And Asia, as you can see, is this whole area here seems to be getting a bit more active. This here, Japan throughout. So I'm just going to cover little highlights, okay? I see that the Indian Ocean, this fault line seems to be getting more active, 5.2, maybe a 6.1. And here again in the Himalayas, there could be a 5.9, 5.2s. That's the highest in there that would happen. Little earthquakes here, but I'm really covering on the larger ones portion. Myanmar, I think there could be a 5.2 to a 5.9 there. Then we're looking at Singapore and that. Anything's, obviously this is a 3.6, probably a 4 there. And that's, sorry, yeah, that was a 5 actually, a 5.0. So that could be anything from a 6.4 eventually next year, but it's little clusters as well. That's getting to be so very active, this whole peninsula. So just be careful of that, and that includes Indonesia. All of these, I see a 7.6 off there, not in Malaysia, but in this area in Indonesia. And on the islands, 6.5, 6.9, 7.5 even. It could be a possibility. Papua New Guinea we covered elsewhere. Then on all of these islands, Fiji, by the way, those islands, Fiji will experience about the highest being a 6.9, which is pretty high, and maybe a 7.1, but that's off the coast. Okay, oops, lost it. Japan is going to do a 7.2, could be a 7.9 later on in the year, and that's off the coast. I'm seeing around about this area. So always active, that whole area. What's becoming active is Taipei and all of this area here. So Taiwan, that's going to, I think they had a large one, but they're going to have maybe a few more larger ones in the 6.5s, 6.8 later too. Okay? Darn it, sorry. China, I'm not really covering too much on China, to be honest, but they may experience a 7.2, 6.9 in their region. Okay? And that's it for Asia. There was a 6.4 in the Philippines already today, apparently, and there will be more, I'm afraid, up to 7.2. And that's for the Philippines, I'm afraid, with clusters more coming, proliferating the Philippines, and not so much in Manila, but the lower islands. Hello, I'm back again with terrorist activity around the world. I know I've added bits and pieces on Europe, etc., elsewhere, but this is far more broad spectrum. Anyway, there are going to be more independent and individual cells of terrorism, and it's as if it's actually part of a hive, which seem to be seeing a resurgence in the following countries. Again, as always, I hope I'm wrong, but I am giving you this information. Iran, Iraq, nearly all the Middle Eastern countries, and even though they some of them support Al-Qaeda and all the others, they do have terrorism, okay? So anyway, Middle Eastern countries, Morocco, Denmark, Belarus, Turkey, Greece. In several countries in the African continent, Vietnam, the Philippines, England, Ireland, Italy, Belgium, Germany, Spain, Sweden, Cuba, America, Canada, Australia, parts of Indonesia, Thailand, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, which is very underground there. Russia will have, but again, it doesn't mean to say it's all or originating from Al-Qaeda. Their terrorism is, there are different faces to it, so remember that. So these terrorist groups seem to be distinctly separate, the ones I'm thinking, or seeing rather. However, they seem to be united with a common central mentality. It's like a pyramid with individuals, part of a larger cluster. The clusters are part of a collective cooperative group. As mentioned previously, they all seem to be being directed by a very financial powerful consortium, which is not based in one country per se. This certainly sounds like a conspiracy theory, but when you take time and put things together, who, what, where, there are too many coincidences with what seems to be coordinated attacks, riots, etc., and protests. Again, as mentioned below, it is all about impacting certain countries and their economy and controlling the masses to devalue and maybe manipulate their currency, etc. What do you think? Anyway, this information was not given to you for you to begin being fearful and living in a life of worry. It is for you to be more aware of how you can control your own life and not let media and the herd mentality dictate your daily routine. Your individual right to decide what is best for you, etc. Isn't that correct? Use this information and as mentioned earlier, it is all about impacting certain countries and their economy and influencing them, controlling the masses to devalue and maybe even manipulate their currency, etc. What do you think? This information was not given to you for you to begin being fearful and living in a life of worry, constant worry actually for many of you. It is for you to be more aware of how you can control your own life and not let media and the herd mentality dictate your daily routine, your individual right to decide what is best for you and your family, etc. Isn't that right? Use this information and decide to just worry about your immediate circumstances. Fortify your own resources, family, finances. Do you have savings enough for 6 months, 1 year plus? Health, food, home, friends, these are things that I know are the individual's worry and fear in a time of crisis or with the chaos that's happening throughout the world. Make a list and look at it every few weeks to a month or so. Ask yourself, what has changed? What needs to be adjusted? Create a backup plan. What is actually important to you? And act on it. Then act on that and work towards that end. You will feel more in control of your life and not part of a crazy world we're existing in today. Create a backup plan. What is important to you? Then act on that and work towards that end. You will feel more in control of your life and not part of the crazy world we are existing in today. I hope next year to put out a few short books with a lot of exercises which are really self-examining, which will help you gain hopefully more control and structure in your life. That is, if anybody is interested. There is a lot of work, self-investigation and realizations a person has to do, your homework, before they are in a position of personal power and can feel independent enough to feel free of worry and fear, which is fear dictates a lot in our lives and we don't even realize it until it's you face off on it. Anyway, if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll work on that for next year. Thank you for joining me on this video. Okay, we're going to North Korea at the moment, and here I wanted to cover it because he's been playing his game. Kim Jong-un is actually stepping up his threatening play with launching ballistic missiles, so-called testing, more like playing chicken. Yes, he will be launching more before the end of the year, maybe as much as 7 that I see. So be warned about that. 3 more short-range missiles near South Korea around late November and into early December, just to create a show of intimidation and fear and co-create that, which he finds it. That's his game plan, put it that way. I also see 2 to 3 missiles long range being launched towards the US, but not really. So let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm going to just bring America in here. Sorry, don't mean to be getting you dizzy here. So, all right, so what I'm seeing here is these 2 to 3 missiles long range being launched towards the US, but not really, just falling short of the international waters, about 200 miles, so short of the US waters. So he's basically not even, it's like here, it's about here that he's launching. So in other words, trying to threaten and show force over there. I hope I'm wrong. And just to show his strength, so-called strength. His arrogance and ego has grown even more and is intent on pushing the limit to test the waters of nuclear independence. Even though two of them who are close to him are warning him not to be so aggressive, his ego is so compromised. He wants to be seen as a big power. Like a little boy wanting to be acknowledged and noticed, he is doing this for attention. His health is not good, even though he has recovered from an illness 2 years ago that I see. I don't know if that's true. He seems to be having issues with his thyroid, compromised health, could be diabetes, and also several heart issues too. He will be absent on the world stage around end of February, a possible surgery which will keep him down for about 2 months. This surgery doesn't necessarily fix him completely. It's really a patch, but to him, it's making him stronger in his mind. It actually co-creates some other medical problems and issues and spurs on more of a deterioration in his health. He has, as with any leader as this, become even more paranoid and is not even trusting his sister, who does also want control of the nation, which she won't admit. He had been grooming her to be a second in his command when he couldn't be visible and or was too ill. She's even more aggressive than him and far more dangerous than her brother has, as she has her own ambitions for power. She doesn't have the cognitive understanding of the power of a nuclear weapon and the repercussions of using it as a bargaining chip can do. She is reckless at times, even though she is quite intelligent, but has a quick temper with not too much of diplomatic experience to weigh the pros and cons of her actions. Being arrogant like her brother, her lack of full understanding of the power of the nation has yet to be fully comprehended. In a way, a wild card. After June, I see she falls from favor from her brother and is nearly eliminated. There seems to be not only reports, but evidence she has been plotting to eventually overthrow her brother. The repercussions, which she should know, are going to be quite harsh. So there is that, but there is far more activity from North Korea. Towards the end of the year, I see that he's getting far more aggressive and taunting with these missiles. Needless to say, the human rights issues are horrific. People are starving and dying, and he doesn't realize that, he doesn't see the whole picture where those families, he needs the people, because without people, he only has troops, and troops have families. So there are a lot of questioning going on and situations on that one. So as for North Korea, that's all I'm going to see. South Korea is going to be far more aggressive around about March, and more or less building up stores up for themselves to, in a precaution of being bombed. But excuse me, I don't see that happening, to be honest. He's just playing like a cat with a mouse with South Korea. Hope this helps you. China situation, again, Russia and China, in the last few years I can't be bothered to touch it, but I am going to talk about it this time. So what I'm seeing is the following facts that I see anyway. China's leader seems to be more and more isolating himself from even his media advisors like Putin, or following his Putinese, should I say, philosophy, becoming more of a recluse, and has become very focused on amassing and creating a superpower of not only China itself, but an empire which will control all the largest economies of the world. And this has been his main push always. But quite frankly, it's now, it's like a tsunami. That's the best way I can tell you. It's like a tsunami. It's coming. It went out, and it afforded him great power and obviously wealth, but came back. It's coming back with with flooding, but in a different way, where the people of China are not putting up with this. There are a lot of underground groups. So to this end, he seems to be forgetting the basics. He is concentrating on gathering, getting, negotiating all his powers, on gaining more strategic pawns in his game of chess. He's after the ownership and control of not only Taiwan, but also other countries, which will serve to tighten his control on technology, finances, economy, arms, etc. He has forgotten, sadly, the people he represents. He has created a duality. He appears to be handing out golden carrots to the people, but really is using the Chinese army to create a hard line of control with fear, manipulating especially all aspects of the poorer citizens, who are desperately, and I can see in several outside villages, hard to survive just for food even, let alone any shelter and stuff. They're more or less being driven into the cities to support his growth plan, which is going nowhere, to be honest. So sadly, I do see that the economy of China is actually near collapsing in different areas. The illusion of great wealth and success of the country as a whole is just that, an illusion. There is only a small percentage of individuals, those who are playing his game, who are being rewarded monetarily, etc. The large majority of people are fighting to survive with the basic food needs, and which is hard to come by. Wages seem to be low and hours long, and there seems to be a lot of double standards and a massive wide breadth in that between the wealth of the rich and the poor. There are a lot of people who are trying to move to other countries and to really make their life in another country so that they can survive, as they're finding it so constricting, obviously under this regime, and being repressed and controlled by the Central Committee, and mainly the main ruling body in China. So to this end, expect to see far more riots, rebellions in Shanghai, Hong Kong, in several major cities in the mainland China too, demanding decent housing, which isn't free, by the way, in certain areas, food, jobs, etc. Sadly, at this time, the Chinese army is well commanded and controlled by the ruling power, the committee. However, on a side note, I do see there is definitely dissension in the ranks, and not only in the lowest level, surprisingly in the highest ranks too, where even it is very much underground and is growing with unrest to see how their families, friends, civilians are being treated, and they don't align with the leaders of the committee. The sad thing here is there are going to be so there are going to be so many who will die for their cause and their beliefs and not being under the communist controlled life. There are close to about 500,000 plus that I see. Obviously, I could be wrong, but who have been arrested and are being kind of retrained, but harshly reconditioned is a good word, mentally, and or are being sent to camps, prisons, even just plain murdered for their actions and beliefs. So this is though his way of controlling people who aren't going to support him. I also see there will be more harsher repercussions against China from other powerful countries who are in a powerful position to throw sanctions against China for not only siding and helping Putin in his horrific war, but also the other methods. There are other methods of retaliation they can use. Yes, we could be coming into an age or a dangerous time of political tension around the world, not only with China and Russia, but with North Korea, which I'll cover. So remember, those who stand on the side of oppression of any kind are not only condoning all actions, but they themselves become and are the oppressor. As with any despot, they will have their day and their actions will catch up to them. Unfortunately, the structure of China, Russia, Syria, and North Korea is that there are too many other despots who are ready to step in and take over and carry the despicable control over their fellow citizens. But really, with the main leaders here of those countries I mentioned, it is something that is, the world is kind of going crazy, obviously. They have nuclear power, and Putin is on the brink of, he could be launching. I don't see it, but I do see a few more attacks that are really brutal, where it's near nuclear, not quite, but nuclear, and that could happen round about just after Christmas or in February. Something's going on there with a bomb that's he's just kind of fed up and he wants to get it over and done with, but he's going to suffer quite a few repercussions. And I know all the countries are trying to be independent of oil from them, but again, it all depends on how you can survive. Other countries can survive without the crutch of the oil and other things, and they can do an oil embargo on it. So hopefully that will help you, or I don't know if I'm right in any of this, but you can let me know. Thank you. In this area on fires, I will say that I do see some fires going on here that are kind of devastating, and it's growing from one small fire into quite a large area, quite acres and acres. So please be careful of that. There's one in Thailand here that's going in as well. That's devastating. It's taking a lot of area, but quite frankly, it's also, there's a bit of fire damage there. And that's really it that I want to touch on anyway.